You don't just have graffiti cover up here. You have Rob out there with machinery getting the brick back to the way it used to be. So this is a beautiful space for our young people. And I gotta admit, this is an example of a space that surely should be replicated throughout our great city. But as far as I'm concerned, there's two major things we need to do on violence prevention. One is we need to concentrate on policy and systems change. The fact is that we had 48,000 people die to gun violence in 2023 across our country. That was 8,000 more than in 2019. Armed violence is the #1 cause of death for children in our country now. That wasn't the case 10 years ago. I can't believe that what I saw in that video at this gas station was a rifle this long. I can't believe that's legal to have in our country. So we need policies and systems change, and I believe we can accomplish that. But it wasn't a couple of weeks ago that I was at the Manuel Perez Plaza Post over on 26th and Colon. That post is named after a Marine veteran who was killed in World War II. It was Memorial Day, and we had 80 veterans on the site there. And there was 20 others of us in support of our veterans. And a woman came up to me and she said, "Mike, I'm afraid to be in this plaza on normal days. I'm afraid to walk across this plaza to go to McDonald's to buy a Happy Meal for my grandchildren." And she said she was afraid because of the vagrancy and some of the violence that was happening in that plaza. Well, I asked her a question. Immigrant woman, we were speaking in Spanish. I asked her a question. I said, "How do you feel right now?" And she says, "I feel great. I feel safe. I have veterans in this plaza. I have community organizations in this plaza. I feel awesome. The Mercado de Colores is here on Saturdays. I feel great when these activities are here." And I said, that's the answer. We need to take over space in the way Beyond the Ball has in this space, in the way our veterans have in the space of Manuel Perez Plaza, and we need to create community. So that's, in my humble opinion, two of our broad tasks, right? How do we get real policy and systems change here in our country and in our great city to create the environment where kids can learn and play and love, families can grow together? But also, we need to incentivize the great work that's happening amongst our nonprofits and our brothers and sisters doing great works across our city and this, our great neighborhood of La Villita. So it's without further ado that I once again welcome you to the neighborhood I've called home all of my life. I heard that the first year of my life was spent on the north side. I'm not going to claim that. But 40-something odd years here in Little Village. And I thank you very much for joining us here today in what's going to be a very critical conversation. It's not our last conversation. It's not our first conversation, but it'll be a very important conversation, particularly given the fact that we have the Superintendent of Police with us, Superintendent Snelling. Give him a round of applause. And someone that I've known for a very long time. We've organized together. We've fought together. We've worked hard together. Our great mayor, Mayor Brandon Johnson. Give him a round of applause for being here with us today as well. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up First Deputy of the Mayor's Office of, I don't know what CS stands for. She'll tell you. Community Safety. Lydia Sorensen. Give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Alderman Rodriguez. Good evening and buenas tardes. My name is Lydia Sorensen, and I have the privilege of serving as the First Deputy in the Mayor's Office of Community Safety. When we launched this work in December, we made a commitment to transparency and to building community. Tonight, our meeting, the second quarterly meeting of the People's Plan for Community Safety, is part of that commitment. We're pleased to have Mayor Johnson, Deputy Mayor Gary Gatewood, and CPD Superintendent Snelling with us tonight for a panel discussion. And later we'll get a chance to hear from two of our community partners leading impactful work with young people here in Little Village before we open it up for small group discussion. But first, I want to share a very quick overview of the People's Plan for Community Safety for those who might be joining us tonight for the first time. The People's Plan for Community Safety is our plan to build a safer Chicago for everyone through purposeful, intentional investments to interrupt and address acute violence while eradicating the root causes of harm. The People's Plan for Community Safety focuses on those most impacted by violence with a two-pronged approach: people-based, interrupting violence and protecting victims and survivors, as well as our young people and adults of highest promise, members of our community who have been impacted by repeated cycles of harm; and place-based, eradicating the root causes of harm by focusing on the areas we know are needed to make a difference in the communities that need us most. These place-based pillars include education, economic opportunity and upward mobility, community environment, housing, health, and policing. We developed the foundational elements of this strategy over the course of 6 months through hundreds of hours of meetings with experts and researchers, funders, businesses, government leaders and their staff, faith and community leaders, and people who are out doing the work every day. And now we're working to turn the plan into action. Within our 9 people and place-based pillars, we identified 20 priority initiatives to start with, shown here on the screen. We established cross-government teams with representatives from the city, county, and state who come together regularly to drive progress. And we've identified and announced the communities in our first wave of focus areas for the place-based investments. 10 block groups across Englewood, Austin, West Garfield Park, and right here in Little Village. We know that we can't address decades of disinvestment overnight, and we also know that our communities can't wait. So we're excited to be making progress. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce some of my colleagues at the Mayor's Office who are leading work on the mental health system expansion in alignment with the People's Plan for Community Safety to share more about that work. Noreen Hashim Jawani, Director of Gender-Based Violence and Health Policy in the Office of the Mayor, Ali Lichterman, Senior Policy Advisor in the Mayor's Office of Community Safety, and Mariana Osoria, First Deputy of Human Services in the Mayor's Office of Education, Youth, and Human Services.
Good evening, everyone. How are you all doing? All right, I'm going to talk to you all a little bit about the mental health system expansion working group and report that we have just published. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Noreen Hashim Jawani, and I'm part of the Mayor's Office policy team, and I'm joined here with my co-leads, Ali Lichterman and Mariana Osoria, who have been incremental in helping us get to this final report. For those of you who might not know, the Mental Health System Expansion Working Group and Report is founded on the values and principles of the Treatment Not Trauma campaign and coordination that you might have heard of. And so what I will talk a little bit about today is actually how I got to the working group stage and what we are presenting within this report as an overview. The objective by City Council ordinance for this working group was to develop a framework of recommendations on 3 principal recommendations. 1 is to expand mental health clinical services. 2 is to instate a non-police response for behavioral and mental health crisis. And 3 is to increase community awareness of available mental health resources. We truly believe that these 3 recommendations are essentially what are going to help us achieve the principles and values of the Treatment Not Trauma campaign. Some of the participants that participated in the working group include members from the fire department, members from the Chicago Department of Public Health, members from 2FM, otherwise known as Facilities and Fleet Management, from Department of Human Resources, the Office of Budget Management, the Mayor's Office, and the Office of Emergency Management and Communication. It's a long list. And part of what I want to demonstrate to you is that this was really an interdepartmental initiative. And in addition to the departments that were involved in helping us arrive at these recommendations, we also had over 400 community members, some of you here today, who helped contribute your expertise and your lived experiences through all of our community meetings and public hearings. There's a QR code up over here if you want to scan it and look at the report for yourself, but we're really excited about what this report shows. On this next slide, you're going to see, and I won't read all of this because I know that we don't have a lot of time, but what I want to demonstrate to you all on this slide is how much support we had across the different departments in our community as well. So over here, you'll see quotes from the Chicago Department of Public Health, our Office of Emergency Management and Communication, a few community members, including the Collaborative for Community Wellness, as well as AFSCME, who have helped us arrive at these recommendations. And now I'd like to invite my colleagues here to give you an overview of what the report has.
Yes, that deserves a clap. Thank you, Noreen. I just want to share that these two women have been incredible in really helping facilitate this process alongside me, and we're very excited to continue to be able to push this forward as we move ahead. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the clinical expansion component of the report. And I really do hope that you have the opportunity to look at the report. There's 40 recommendations in it, and we've already begun to meet some of the recommendations there, but we're super excited to be able to move them forward. But I'll talk a little bit about the phases of this report. The first phase that you see here talks about establishing a comprehensive vision for clinical services. And to what Noreen was saying, there was certainly a lot of communication and partnership across the departments within the city of Chicago, but also many of the advocates really kind of built this together, and we identified a few things. Identified a suitability analysis that we would be using to identify where locations would be going, as well as strategies around what are the ways that the city is going to expand mental health services in our communities across the city of Chicago. And so, and
Mass evictions no more, not a crime to be poor. Mass evictions no more, not a crime to be poor. Mass evictions no more, not a crime to be poor. City's evicted 1,000 migrants, 1,000 refugees into the street. We've got a lot of people that are sleeping outside. 70,000 people are sleeping outside, and you guys sit and talk about public safety. You've got kids, you've got Venezuelan kids, people from Ecuador sleeping in the parks.
talking about the component that we're talking about now, which is mental health. And again, I want to reiterate that much of the work that we do is in partnership with community and folks like you all kind of guiding and leading us into this work. So again, phase one really was developing that process, identifying how are we going to expand mental health services with the understanding that it is part of a bigger picture around community safety. We know that many folks need access to mental health services, and we want to continue to do that. So that is in our first phase. The second phase, we really will be laying the groundwork to be able to identify and support how we provide holistic services, be able to expand offerings to 24/7. And then in phase three, we're going to be in the process of implementing what we call a CCBHC, so a certified community behavioral health center. We will be, again, throughout these phases, there's a number of recommendations, such as identifying the ecosystem to be able to be responsive, identify our partners, continue to work with our advocates. And I just want to highlight, and then I'll pass it over to Ali really quick to talk about alternate response, is that in 2024, we already have some wins, right? One, and you might have heard about these already, one is doing co-location at the Chicago Public Library. We started that this month in June, co-location at Legler Regional Library. And then we also have committed to reopening Roseland Mental Health Center on the south side, which is one of the city's, yes, which is one of the 12 mental health centers that were shuttered in the city of Chicago in previous years. And then finally, not too far from here on the Lower West Side, and I see our Alder Sixto Lopez is here, we will be layering in additional mental health services in the Lower West Side Chicago Department of Public Health Clinic, and we're super excited to be able to do that, and again, be in partnership with community to identify what are those mental health services that are going to be needed and will be provided in that center. So I'm really excited. I hope that you are too. It is part of the overall mission of our work and wanting to ensure that our communities are safe and respond to the needs of our children, our families, and individuals. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Allie.
Hello, good evening. I'm Allie Lichterman again, and excited to get to walk you all through the behavioral health crisis response portion. We not only need places for people to go for consistent services and to drop folks off, we need to be able to meet people in crisis and behavioral health crisis with the right resources at the right time. And I had the privilege of leading our alternate response subgroup, meaning how do we build teams to respond to behavioral health crises that are behavioral health forward and don't center police and are getting the right resource at the right time. So in phase 1, which is where we are now, we're working to implement a health-driven, non-police model of behavioral health crisis response. That means that we are rolling our police and fire departments back to their primary purpose work off of our care teams and consolidating all under the Department of Public Health to make sure that it's as behavioral health focused and forward as possible and providing, again, that right care at the right time. And our exciting win of this year is that in the mayor's budget, we have funded to actually double our number of care alternate response teams by the end of the year. Then moving into phase 2, we're going to start expanding geographic reach and really planning for permanence. That was something we heard over and over again, was that this needs to be a permanent part of our emergency response ecosystem so that we can always dispense the right resource at the right time. And then finally, moving into phase 3, we'll be rolling out expanded hours and building towards 24/7 coverage. We know that's going to take a minute, but that is the vision that we are moving towards. And as my colleagues have said, this has been an incredibly interdepartmental effort that we're really already moving on to implement. This week alone, I've met with the Office of Emergency Management and Communication, the Health Department, the Fire Department, the Police Department, and Human Resources, as well as outside academic partners to start pushing our phase 1 goals forward. And excited to keep working. If you all are interested in getting involved, please come find any of us. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Allie, Mariana, and Noreen for the amazing work that you're doing. Good evening, everyone. I'm Natasha Scott. I am the Assistant Deputy Mayor of Community Safety, and I'm happy to welcome you here this evening. Now we are going to move into a panel discussion with Mayor Brandon Johnson, Superintendent Snelling, and Deputy Mayor of Community Safety, Gary and Gatewood. I'd like to invite them to the stage now. As they make their way to the stage, I'll go through a few things that we've been working on recently. Through the plan, People's Plan for Community Safety, we are making intentional and sustained investments in communities to address the root causes of harm. A long-term focus is important because we cannot police our way out of disinvestment and neglect that is leading to violence. We need to address the root causes of harm. At the same time, we cannot ignore the violence that's happening right now. Historically, Chicago sees increases in violence in summer months that requires a comprehensive and flexible approach driven by continuous coordination between the city, community, and other stakeholders. Today, we are going to talk about how the city is working to address violence now while also building lasting community safety. So let's get started. So my first question will be for everyone. Safety is a top priority for all of you. I know this, and for all of us here tonight. I also know that each of you approach this work in a different way. Can each of you share a little with us about your vision for safety and how to build a safer Chicago? And I'll start with you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you for that question, and good evening, everyone. It's really good that you all have taken time to be in this hot gym tonight. That shows you your dedication. I often talk about just my own personal connection to this moment. And many of you all know that I'm raising my family on the west side of Chicago in the beautiful neighborhood of Austin. My family, we worship in North Lawndale. So I understand and know the urgency of this moment. The Austin neighborhood, like Little Village, have suffered over the course of decades as a result of disinvestment. And what we have seen, because of the disinvestment from previous administrations, violence is essentially the symptom of resources being snatched away from our communities. And so what I've said repeatedly, that my vision for safety in Chicago is that every single neighborhood has safe spaces and that we are fully funding our public accommodations, so education, transportation, healthcare, jobs, that every single family has exactly what they need in order to thrive. The best way to secure communities is really through investments in economic development. That's the one thing that safe communities across the country have in common. They invest in people, and that is what my vision for public safety is, to invest in people in order to ensure that our communities have everything that they deserve in order to thrive.
Thank you, Mayor. Superintendent?
Good evening. Sorry about that. The first thing I'll say is this, especially when it comes to my vision of safety. It's deeper than just policing. We always talk about policing. What are the police doing? The police can't do this alone. I said this from the moment that I stepped into this office. The police are asked to do a lot of things that they don't necessarily have the resources to get done. These officers are out here putting their lives on the line, trying to keep people safe, and it's very important to understand what these officers are dealing with on a daily basis. Now, that being said, when we look at the mayor's vision, which is extremely important because this is something that we have not had in the past, where there are additional resources, other arms of the city of Chicago that are stepping in to help and fill in some of those gaps where CPD is expected to do everything. So we need to partner with our community members, which is extremely important. Again, if we're not talking to each other, if we're not understanding each other, we're not getting anywhere. If the Chicago Police Department is not understanding the people that we're out here to protect and serve and understanding your needs, then we're not doing this the right way. On that same note, if our community members don't know or understand our police officers and what they're dealing with on a daily basis and their challenges, then we leave each other with not enough information in order for us to move forward. So if we're going to be partners and we're going to partner in this, it's important for us to sit down and have these conversations, get to know each other, where we can empathize with each other, we understand each other's needs, and we can work together. I think there's just been a lot of miscommunication between our community members and our police. We have to humanize each other. It can't be us and them, it's gotta be us. And if it's not us, everything breaks down. So here's what I'll tell you. We're working closely, especially even in this community now, especially with the conflict that's going on over here right now, with our outreach partners. It's extremely important to understand what they're dealing with and what they're going through stepping out here. Just like police officers' lives are in danger every single day, when we have people who step up and they want to intervene and they want to bring down some of the violence that's going on in this neighborhood, especially as it's related to gangs, these individuals are also putting their lives on the line, as we've seen. And I can tell you this right now. So when you're standing up for your community, it's dangerous. It really is. It's dangerous to stand up for your community at times. But that danger is short-lived when everyone stands together. So when the police are standing up, when you're standing up, it's less likely that you're going to be in the same level of danger that you would be if you did it alone. So we want to make sure that we're on that journey with you. We want to make sure that we're out there. So a few things that we've done in policing right now that's going to help us get there. One, intelligence-driven policing. The use of technology. We just created a CGIC Center. That's our crime gun analysis center, right? So what that section of our department does, we're working directly with the ATF. So when there's a shooting, when we collect shell casings, we can run those shell casings for DNA. We run the gun through NIBIN. We can tell where that gun's been, who bought it, if it's something that was a part of trafficking, and we do the research on that. Now, what we've been able to do is also connect that to people who have committed murders. Some of the recent murders that we've solved has been just through that program. One of the things that I can tell you right now is, tragically, Jaimani Rivera lost his life at the hands of someone who just decided to pick up a gun and start shooting. The individual who shot him was 16 years old. The question is, where did we lose that 16-year-old? Because wherever we lost that 16-year-old, that's why we lost the 7-year-old. So as a whole, we've got to reach out to our youth. What I want to do from our department is, with our community policing strategy, every single one of our police officers is a community police officer. It's not just siloed to one section of our department where one officer or a group of officers are community-based police officers. All of our officers have to engage with our community members the same way. We have to engage with our children. We have to have these programs for our children while they're very young. The uplifting thing for me was walking out there and seeing all those kids running around on the playground out there with adults, adult supervision, making sure that those children are safe out there. That's what we need more of. If we're not watching out for our children, if we're not standing with them, then they're in danger also. We have to guide them. And with our Chicago Police Department and our community policing programs, that's what we're going to be reaching out to. That being said, we're also going to have boots on the ground where we're looking at areas where we see the most violence. What we were doing before, and it's been working, it's been effective, is that we've broken things down by our top 50 beats and our 35 most violent beats. But we're going to get a little more stringent with it now. So we're going to look at the most violent areas within those beats so that we have a greater target on the violence that's happening in those neighborhoods in your communities. We're going to be reaching out and listening to our community members a lot more in the complaints that are coming out, because who has better information than people in the community? We'll be working directly with CDI, all of our violence interrupters, our outreach members, and I see some of them in the room here right now who do great work out there, and thank you for the service that you're providing out there. And we know that this is hard work, but we're going to be working with you to get this done. So one thing I can promise you from our Chicago police officers, because we see it happening on a daily basis, they are working, and they are working hard. We've got a lot of work to do, right? As we go through reform right now, it's necessary. We do need to go through reform measures in our police department so we get to the bottom of public safety in the way that we need to. But at the same time, I need to make sure that I get all of my officers the resources that they need so that they can serve you. I want to make sure that our officers are safe, because if they can protect themselves, then we know they can protect you. So we want to make sure that we're walking hand in hand with everyone in here. Lastly, I'll say this. We can provide resources. We can address violence immediately. That's fine. But if we don't have the program as a whole, if we're not looking at the People's Plan as a whole, where now we're reaching out to families, children, who need resources, families who need resources, then we will continue to have to do this reactive work forever. The only way that we're going to bring this down is to do both simultaneously. So we can't have one without the other. Enforcement is great for the moment, but we'll continue to enforce if we don't have the resources going into the neighborhoods on the back end of it. So I am proud to be a part of this. I am proud to be superintendent of the city of Chicago and to sit here in this room with people who are concerned about their neighborhoods, because I'm as concerned as you are. And when I walk through and see those children out there, those are the things that drive us as the Chicago Police Department. It's the thing that drives me, because that's our future. And we'll continue to work with you. We're going to continue to stand with you, and we're going to make sure that we keep these neighborhoods safe.
Thank you, Sue. Deputy Mayor.
So first, the vision for safety and what safety means for the city is when people start to feel safe. So you think about the vision that the superintendent just went through, and you think about the approach that the mayor's talked about consistently, investing in people. You look at work-like treatment, not trauma. You look at guaranteed basic income. You look at all this wraparound support that we will get into, and why we have taken such a targeted approach to safety and violence in the city. It is not an either or. This is a both and. There is a need to continue to think about what we build on long term, because as the soup just mentioned and as the mayor has laid out very clear, if you don't address the root causes and address long-term problems, there will be folks, well, the mayor will be here for 24 years, 24 years in that spot, but there'll be other folks having the same conversation years down the line about what should have been done. So you need both. You need an approach where we can wrap our arms around communities. The mayor said this the other day. You need opportunity and accountability. You can't have one without the other. So it's important that we not only give the resources that are necessary to people in our departments, but also that we also hold folks accountable who are causing harm in communities. It's important that we also constantly talk about how much we ask the police to do. So going from that, how do we actually build out models where we relieve some of that stress and pressure from them? And that's been a part of the work that we've been working to build, that we'll talk about a bit more in detail on what that looks like with this approach and why we've taken this approach. So look, I know it's warm in here, so I'll be short and let Natasha get to the next question.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My next question is, I'll let you all clap.
Smittering of applause there.
My next question is for you, Mayor. We know that year-to-date shootings and homicides are down in Chicago. However, as the soup mentioned, we've recently seen an unfortunate quick uptick in violence in communities such as Little Village and other communities across the city. Can you talk a little bit about what our administration is doing to address summer violence?
Yeah, I do think it's important that we lift up the work that we have done thus far and the results that we have achieved. That homicides were down last year, homicides and shootings were down last year. We are trending in the right direction so far midway through this year. The superintendent spoke of the 35 most violent beats. Homicides and shootings are down higher in those particular areas. And it has a lot to do with the type of strategic investments as well as the strategic organizing in those specific areas. I can't emphasize enough like how much pain, however, our city has experienced as a result of shootings and homicides. One shooting, one homicide, it's one too many. And the reason why it's so critical for us to address the immediate crisis that we are experiencing while also getting at the root causes of violence in Chicago is because I do not want a repeat of what happened a generation ago. And not to bore you all too much, but when President Johnson made this appeal to get at the root causes of violence in America, he was mocked, then by, extremist governors. President Nixon made a mockery of that approach. And what we experienced as a result of not getting at the root causes 60 years ago is that you had police states that were created, the prison population or industrial complex exploded, and our communities were actually less safe. Some of you all in here, especially Gen Xers, you all remember the 90s, and they were excruciating. It was brutal. 800, 900 murders, while at the same time, schools were being closed and privatized, public housing was being shut down, the job opportunities were dissipating. And I'm saying that all to say is that in the midst of this crisis that we are experiencing, is that we have to do both and the approach that I'm taking as mayor, when the superintendent talks about how we rely too much on policing, my administration has been very intentional about making sure that other departments and agencies are providing support in this moment. And that's why the Park District, our Chicago Public Schools, all of our sister agencies, our libraries, our departments are all leaning in together to show up and respond to this moment. Because ultimately what we have to do is create stable neighborhoods by providing real economic security for these neighborhoods. And that's what we haven't had. We do have, rapid and immediate response teams that are showing up for communities like Little Village. There's another RFP that I believe that we're gonna release for $1 million for the areas that we are focusing in on, which Austin, Garfield Park, Inglewood, and of course right here in Little Village. And we need all of the community-based organizations and our partners. That includes the philanthropic community, the business community. It's gonna take all of us, along with the full force of government, to show up for neighborhoods like Little Village to ensure that we are responding, as our Deputy Mayor has indicated, with true accountability, making sure that individuals who have been terrorized, who in instances are causing terror in our communities, that those individuals are held accountable. But we also have to make sure that we are cutting off the pipeline of trauma. I'm gonna try that one more time. We have to cut off the pipeline of trauma. And when we do that, we put ourselves in a much stronger position to stabilize communities while also building up the consciousness of these communities to ensure that every single life is valued, and that life has to be valued before they pick up a gun or before they become a victim of someone with a gun.
Thank you, Mayor. My next question is for you, Superintendent. Can you please share a little bit about the CPD summer safety plans and talk about how CPD is responding to a lot of the trends that we're seeing across the city, but also particularly in Little Village?
So there's a lot that's going on this summer, as you may know. We've got the 4th of July coming up. Shortly after that, we have the NASCAR event. We've got Lollapalooza. There's a million other events going on downtown. I saw you got really happy when I said Lollapalooza. Man, you have tickets? Oh, okay. Not yet. After that, we've got the DNC. And these are things that people are concerned about. So I'll tell you a little bit about the plan moving forward. We always have plans in place for the 4th of July because we know that time we have people out who are enjoying themselves. There are a lot of fireworks that are going on out there. We have to have a safety plan around that because every year we know that someone gets seriously injured with fireworks, and usually it's kids. And we'll have information coming out about that, about safety and how we should celebrate safely. Beyond that, NASCAR, obviously we've done this. We did it last year. We're going to do it again this year. We'll have a plan around that with our officers, making sure that the area around there is safe. But at the same time, we want to make certain that we are not depleting resources in areas like this. We want to make sure that in areas where we know we have to have deployments and we need our officers out there, they will be there. So moving forward into the DNC, and I know that that is the biggest concern for most people, the week of the DNC in August, where we know that we're going to need an abundance of manpower in the area where the DNC is going to be held. However, our plan and our neighborhood safety plan is wrapped around making sure that we keep the brightest and the best in those areas. And what I mean by that, our officers who are very aggressive, our officers who are working, know the neighborhoods, know the community, know what's going on in those neighborhoods, and know what resources need to be provided to keep the neighborhood safe at that time. Those officers will be available in the neighborhoods. Now, each district commander in every district across the city will have an emergency mobilization plan in place just in case something just goes awry in the city, which we're not expecting, but we're preparing for. They will all have a wellness plan for our officers because our officers will be dealing with canceled days off during that time and in some cases extensions of tours of duty. And what you may not know is when our officers are dealing with wide-scale protests, they're dealing with a lot of verbal abuse. In some cases, sometimes physical abuse, things being thrown at them, things of that nature. And we have to make sure that our officers are well rested, properly hydrated, that they're eating. Because if we have an officer out there who's dehydrated, fatigued, malnourished, we know that cognitively that officer may not be there 100%. And what we have to understand, and I've said this a million times, these officers are human beings who will have a human reaction like any other human being if they're not trained to do the work that they're doing. Our officers are going through at least 60 hours of training to deal with the events that may occur during the summer, and they will be well prepared to do that. Now, within the neighborhoods, we are going to be working with all of our community partners, all of CVI, all of our outreach partners, just to make sure that we're filling in those gaps. We'll be sharing information within the neighborhoods with our outreach partners as to where they're needed. So what I will tell you is this: we get a lot of large gatherings, teen gatherings, along with all of the planned events across the city. We get teens who will go into downtown or go to 31st Street Beach, right? North Avenue Beach, Millennium Park. You have no idea how many times we find information where we're expecting 500 to 1,000 teens to converge upon those locations. What we do to put an end to that is that we get to those locations before they get there. Our outreach partners have done an excellent job of working with us because I'll tell you right now, dealing with those young people, it's something different. And all you have to do is talk to some of the individuals in this room who have had to deal with some of the young people down there. It is very, very challenging to deal with some of the young people down there. And listen, we want to make sure that we don't go overboard when we're handling young people. We know that in most cases they're probably following something on social media, and we do want to be careful, but we do want to make sure that they understand that we're not going to tolerate violence. We're not going to tolerate vandalism. We're not going to tolerate them going into neighborhoods and destroying things. So as soon as we see crimes being committed, we're on top of it immediately, and we're not going to allow that to continue. If we can divert them to some other location where they can do something more productive, we'll do that. Along with the mayor's plan and talking to Deputy Mayor Gary and Gatewood, the programs that are out there right now are going to be programs for some of these teenagers so that they have something else to do other than go into downtown and wreak havoc. As you've seen, sometimes these things turn violent. We have kids who are carrying guns. Sometimes kids get shot in these locations. Again, I believe that we've done an excellent job. CPD, along with our partners who are working with us from CVI, they've done an excellent job of keeping those things down. The other thing that we look at and we try to pay attention to are pop-up parties. street takeovers, where people go into neighborhoods, take over a block and decide to throw a party out there. We know those things usually never end well, because within those crowds, there's drug use, there's drinking, and that's a recipe for disaster, especially at 1 a.m. So when we get this information, we're using our technology, our SDSC rooms, to monitor those things. We have boots on the ground. Our supervisors will go over, look at these locations, monitor them, make sure that we are not overstepping and violating someone's rights, knowing that people have the right to assemble, but we want to make sure that they're doing it peacefully and they're not causing a disturbance for the residents in those locations. So our officers are working with that. Again, I told you about a more focused approach when it comes to our beats. We will be looking at those locations where we're seeing the most crime and the most violent crime. We will be focused on that. We're building better cases. So when we have people who we know are very violent repeat offenders, we will be trying to get those people off the street as soon as possible, and we will try to keep them off of the streets. Because we know that when we have someone out there who's causing harm to families, that could lead to retaliation, and the crime is just ongoing. So with the overall approach, I think we're going to have a more effective way of getting this done. Now, lastly, what I'll say is this. When we talked about technology, what we've seen is an uptick in robberies over the past 2 years. We're seeing it trend down a little, but not enough. We talk about the homicides being down. We talk about the shootings being down, and they are. Things are trending in the right direction. If we brought it down to one homicide, we could say that's beautiful, it's great, but tell that to the family of the one person who was the victim of the homicide. So what we want to do is focus on everything to make sure that we can maintain the level of peace in this city and bring some safety to you. I am not promising you that this is going to happen overnight. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to solve it overnight. But what I will tell you is myself, Chicago Police Department, will be working their fingers to the bone to make sure that we keep all of our communities safe across the city.
Thank you, Superintendent. My next question is for you, Deputy Mayor. The mayor talked a little bit about the importance of addressing the right now, as well as long-term approach to safety. Can you please share some examples of the work that our team has been doing, the Mayor's Office of Community Safety, what we've been doing to drive impact now while also working on those long-term investments?
Yeah, absolutely. So as mentioned earlier by our first deputy, we launched the People's Plan back in December. Since December, we have created 18 initiative teams that have over 150 partners throughout city agencies. 18 and 19 city agencies that are all focused on safety together. We had these pillars that Lydia went through earlier, and we really started to tackle this work, not only from having it in a space where you have myself, our policy advisors who are spread throughout the room, who are doing incredible work, but also our partners from our sister agencies and the work that they have done to commit to safety and looking at safety from a different perspective, from community environment, taking back vacant lots and giving them back to communities to activate safe spaces, because the safe spaces that are outside that Rob and his team run, we need to replicate that around the city. So taking the models that Rob has, how do we do that? How do we build out from that work? You heard so much from the wonderful team leading our work on treatment, not trauma, our mental health system expansion work, which has been phenomenal too. And the superintendent alluded to the partnership between CPD and CVI. That work in particular has been remarkable, from the professional understanding, the lines of communication that we see across so many districts between CVI partners and CPD, strong relationships right here in Little Village, and we continue to expand that work. You know, the mayor mentioned a request for proposals that we had out a couple of weeks ago for $1 million to go to 4 community-based organizations. One will be right here in Little Village. You know, the place that we actually announced that was the launching of the Little Village Quality of Life Plan a few weeks ago. So we're excited about that work, the phenomenal work that's been put in there. And just last week, we announced the expansion of our Emergency Supplemental Victims Funds from 5 neighborhoods in the city to 15 neighborhoods in the city. And going beyond that, if a family has a victim, unfortunately, of crime, violent crime, under the age of 24, they're eligible for resources throughout the entire city. On top of those investments, we recently, and I say recently, yesterday, announced a new hospital-based violence intervention RFP as well, because for the first time, the city of Chicago is putting dollars in, through the mayor's leadership, dollars in hospital-based violence prevention, where we have seen spaces where a lot of retaliation comes from the pain that people are seeing in hospitals. So we need to be there. We need to have folks on the ground there so they can work in conjunction and be there for those families. So really understanding how we wrap our arms around victims, how we wrap our arms around investments in people. This work is obviously not easy, but the fact that we have so many agencies that are dedicated to working together, and then taking an approach where we take a block by block approach, a precision approach, where we looked at the most impacted areas in the city. We looked at over 13 factors, from rent burden, unemployment, violence, as both the mayor and the superintendent talked about, the top 35 most violent beats. We layered on top of those most violent beats school closures, unemployment rates, rent burden, and so many other areas like spaces where folks had access to primary health care physicians, all wrapped in to look at where we felt like we could have the most impact. And that level of partnership that we have seen is something that I'm excited about, that keeps us rolling in this work. Obviously, we know there's a ton of work to do, and we'll continue to do that. But the beauty of it is the door's open to work with anybody. Anybody who wants to work with the mayor's office, anybody who wants to work with the Chicago Police Department, the door's open to work together. We want partnership. We need partnership because, as both of these gentlemen have said, we didn't get here overnight. We won't get out of this overnight. And the mayor said it repeatedly. We've inherited things that we're going to fight through with community, and we're going to do that together. So I'm excited about the work that's happening. I'm excited about how it's been driven by community and how it will continue to be driven by community. Because I think there's been too many times where government has shown up and we've said, hey, Little Village, this is what you need. In order to get to this place where we selected the block groups in Little Village, we turned to Alderman Rodriguez, because who knows the Little Village and his community better than this alderman? So he sat down with leaders and we identified block groups where we knew there were high areas of crime and also high areas of disinvestment. So how do we take that precision approach and layer our investments to go in deep, go in intentional, and you layer that with the presence of the Chicago Police Department so we can really see those investments turn around and we can see the changes that we want to see in communities across the city and replicate these models. So excited about that and excited about what's to come.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My next and last question is for everyone. We talked a lot tonight about the importance of partnership and the role that community and everyone else can play in creating safety. Can each of you please share what you see as next steps and how people here tonight can build safe communities across the city?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And again, thank you all for your engagement and your participation in building a better, stronger, safer Chicago. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge yet again, having partners in City Council allows my administration to carry out the vision of building a better, stronger, safer Chicago. And so thank you to both Alders, Sigcho Lopez and Rodriguez, for your unwavering commitment to justice. You know, look, I've talked a lot about investments, and I do that intentionally because that is the key to transforming our city. When you love someone, you invest in them. And so what's coming up soon, and both Alders, Rodriguez and Sigcho Lopez always appreciate this time of year, budget season is coming up. And when we describe the conditions in which we are living in, none of us created these conditions. And I just want us to own that a little bit, because as much as it's our responsibility to transform our communities, we have to be very clear about how we got here. And so the intentional disinvestment and the stripping away of basic human needs was an act of violence. It was an act of violence. And when we have our budget process, I need all of you in this room to participate with a level of aggressiveness that matches the moment of urgency. There are forces who refuse to accept the fact that in order for us to transform our communities, we have to have fully funded neighborhood schools. We have to ensure that healthcare and mental health care is available for our people. We have to build more affordable housing. We have to make sure that our young people have real opportunity to thrive and grow. We are in a position now to hire up to 28,000 young people for summer jobs, which is an increase from last year, which was an increase from the year before. We are already seeing the signs of how these investments play a part in driving down homicides and shootings. Creating opportunities and accountability cannot come without resources. So when we have these community meetings, work with your alders around this budget, because you have a mayor who is committed and willing to align my heart with treasure, because that's what I'm governed by. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Little Village is a treasurer. Austin, treasure. North Lawndale, Inglewood, these are treasures. And so our heart has to be aligned through how we invest in these communities. And the individuals who refuse to help us pass a budget that invests in people, they are part of the violence that we are trying to eradicate.
Thank you, Mayor. Superintendent?
What I will say about partnership, if everyone in the room was paying attention to something that happened about 30 minutes ago, you could see partnership, right? There was a brief disruption in here. Our officers are in the back of that room. They didn't overreact. And guess what? Someone from within the ranks of this room went over and intervened and put an end to it. And it ended without incident. It was peaceful. These are the things that can happen when we work together. These are the things that can happen when we figure out what our roles are in response to anything in this city. It's important to understand that everybody can play an important role in keeping people safe in this city. My question is, when we clean something up, how do we keep it clean? We oftentimes go into communities, we'll do a clean and green, and then we'll leave, and then we go back and the same issues are occurring in that area. When I was a commander of Inglewood, I looked at an area at 63rd and Halsted, and I compared it to an area, 63rd and Ashland, a little less than a mile away. 63rd and Halsted, there were no problems. You looked at the map, there were no problems. There was no gang activity, there was no drug selling, there was no loud music, there was nothing. Because right there at 63rd and Halsted, there was a Whole Foods, there was a bank, there was a Chipotle, a Wingstop, things that no one had ever seen in the community of Inglewood. Kennedy King College, it's a beautiful new campus over there. These were things that no one had seen in that community before. There was an investment in that neighborhood, an investment in the people in that neighborhood. So we didn't see any crime around that area. But fast forward, we moved down to 63rd and Ashland. We had liquor stores there, cell phone shops, things of that nature. And that's where we saw an abundance of crime, criminal activity, people hanging out. The question again is, when we clean something up, how do we keep it clean? We have to invest in our neighborhoods because we have to step up as a whole. And when I say we, I mean everybody in this room. So when I'm talking we, my officers are back in the back of the room and I couldn't be more proud of them. But I expect them to stand with you, and I would hope that you stand with us, because this is how we get things done. I actually saw it in Inglewood. What I realized is that when you give community members a voice and you allow them a level of responsibility, they will step up. Because when you when you are vested in your community, and it's important to you the way that your community is seen, what is happening in your community, you will step up. I've seen it. I was a little late getting in here. Somebody from the mayor's detail came out there and got me, said, you need to be inside. There was only one thing that made me late for coming in here. As I was walking through, every time I took about 5 steps, a young person ran up and said, hey, can I take a picture with you? I'll be late for that. I'll be late for that. It is important to understand that our kids, those kids out there right now, should be the driving force for every single thing that we do. They are the future. And I'll tell you, someone told me, the other day at the press conference, you seemed emotional. I was. When you think about a 7-year-old whose life was taken, how could you not be emotional? When I think about a 73-year-old man who was still living in the heart of a community that he did not have to live in, but he wanted to make things better over there and became a reverend and worked with everybody in that community, and his life was taken. How could you not be emotional? So what I would ask everyone in this room is to not allow someone who doesn't know you or your community to tell you what you need in your community. I would ask everyone in your community to step up and tell us what you need in your community. You'll get a better response from us, I guarantee you, because we know what you need in your community because we're here. And we're not going to come from the outside, not intermingle with you, not understand your needs or your children's needs, and not step up when we need to, and not be here when you need us. We're going to be here when you need us, and we'll always be here when you need us. All we want is some partnership. Understand us. Trust me. If my officers are not doing what they're supposed to do, I will hold them accountable. Absolutely, 100%. That is necessary. Otherwise, you wouldn't need leadership or supervision. I'm going to make sure that our officers walk the line that they're supposed to walk. But I'm also going to stand up for our officers, especially when I know that they're out there trying to keep you safe. When I know that they're keeping those children out there safe. When I know that those kids are going to school, that they're safe to and from school. These are important things. If we start there, there's no doubt in my mind that we can turn things around and turn these neighborhoods around. So for everyone in the room, all of my CVI partners in here, I've heard nothing but great things about the work that you've been doing out here. Thank you for that work, and thank you for every community member in here who's willing to step up and take care of your community.
Thank you, Superintendent. Deputy Mayor, next steps?
I think massive next steps are to continue collaboration. I think the way that we have designed this work is to be very intentional. I'm hoping over the next couple of weeks we're able to publicly name who the anchor organizations are and working with them to not only move your quality of life plan forward, but also finding other ways to partner. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The door is always open for us to work together. We will work with anybody who wants to work, anybody. Because if there's one thing that everybody, not only in this room, not only in this neighborhood, but everybody who comes through the city of Chicago, they're all concerned about safety. And the only way we get to a safer Chicago is if we do it together. And the way we do that together is we partner, we listen, and we push forward. When there are opportunities for resources, please apply for them. Because the reason we put resources out is because we want our capacity to grow. We need capacity to grow in order to address the issues that we see. So we have the doors open. And when the mayor came in, he said the 5th floor is open. And I promise you it is. As we went through the process of building this out, we had nearly 400 people come through that door for 29 meetings on a consistent basis. And then we started going out to communities because that's what it called for. And we want to continue to do that. We want deep partnership and we want intentional partnership. So I appreciate it, and I think that's the way we can work together.
So that ends the panel discussion. Can you all please join me in thanking the mayor, superintendent, and deputy mayor Gatewood.
Can we give it up for our moderator, Assistant Deputy Mayor Scott? Come on, y'all, give it up for our moderator. Well done. She had three brothers that had a lot to say. She kept us moving, though. Thank you,
I tried
sis.
my best. I tried. All right, so now I will hand it over to Deputy Mayor Gatewood to transition us into the small group discussion.
We're actually going to call up two of Little Village's heroes to bring us home, because what we'll do instead of the small group discussions is we'll send out surveys to follow up with folks looking at the time we have. And I know Alderman Rodriguez let us know that there's a game at 8, so we'll make sure we get folks out of here. But we do want to bring up two heroes, and I do mean heroes in the Little Village community and the city overall, Matt DiMatteo and Rob Castaneda, to bring us home on what it means to be here and the work that they've done. So thank you, gentlemen.
All right, well, we got to get to, I saw a joke on Facebook that tonight's game, Venezuela versus Mexico, the winner receives Little Village. So we'll see. It's a battle over Little Village. But we're hoping Mexico can pull it off. My name is Matt DiMatteo. I am a pastor here. I'm the CEO of New Life Centers. I've lived and served here in Little Village for the past 24 years, here with my wife, Sarah, my 3 kids who are here tonight. They just came from their one summer job. My daughter just graduated from Farragut High School. The 2 boys are there in the fall. Bella's headed to UIC on a full ride with Hope Chicago, and she'll be studying urban education and social work. So excited to see young people in the community thrive. Last week at a YOLO Cali event, I reminded the mayor, he often says that Chicago is the greatest freaking city in the world, but I'm going to remind him again tonight that Little Village is the greatest freaking neighborhood in the universe. So if you could start to add that to your speeches, that'd be perfect. So safety for our kids, for our neighbors, that's why we're here. That's why we're all here. We believe in safety for our kids. Over the last 24 years, I unfortunately have buried too many children, too many young people that we've lost to violence. And so to build a safe Little Village, we need all of us. We need policing, we need street outreach, we need nonprofits, we need churches, we need neighbors, we need business, we need all of those things to create safety. At New Life, we mentor young people, we provide after-school safe havens, we do sports and play for 2,500 young people. We have CVI, Community Violence Intervention, responding to the shootings in Little Village and Pilsen and Brighton Park. We have victim advocates responding to those spaces and places. Pan de Vida, many of you know, right here on Lawndale. We feed families. We provide care for new neighbors. All of those are important, but it's all of this collaboration right here that makes Little Village special. This is our secret sauce, is the working together. And so our street outreach workers, even tonight during this meeting, we had to deploy them to respond to an incident. They had to step out, and we got a call, and we had to go check and make sure everything was fine. Thankfully, nobody was shot. But we have to respond to spaces and places like that. So I'd like to give it up for our CVI outreach workers here. Men and women who respond to incidents of violence. They're out there late at night, they're canvassing, they're responding, they're caring, they're working on rumor control, they're working to stop the next shooting. For the future, we're actually working on expanding that. We're actually working on expanding CVI here in Little Village. An entire group of us are planning over the next 6 months. If you'd like to hear more, you can talk to me later. But we are working closely with the mayor and his team to be able to provide a safe and peaceful Chicago. Because guess what? Youth need what we all need. They need relationships, they need community, they need hope, and they need opportunity. And so you're invited this summer as we're working to create safe spaces for everyone. Any time during the summer, you can go out to Petrowski Park on Monday nights. You can go out to 28th and Karlov on Wednesday nights. You can go out to La Vita Park and McCormick School on Thursday nights. And you can go out to McCormick and Gary here and we have large activities like Rob is doing here with Project Play, there are ways to step in and serve and be part of the solution. So we invite you to come out and be in those spaces and places. But it's not just working with the high opportunity youth, it's working all together as a community. So I want to pass it over to Rob Castaneda, Executive Director for Beyond the Ball, to share and close out our time together.
So as Matt said, my name is Rob Castaneda. I'm the co-founder, along with my wife Amy, who's actually doing security detail in the hallway. She's an educator. She's been teaching for 27 years here in Chicago Public Schools. She's an art teacher, and she's been an amazing partner these last 27 years. So she can't hear me, Amy, but I love you. Thank you. I just want to say thank you real quick, and then just leave you with two thoughts. Number one, thank you, Mayor Johnson. Thank you, Superintendent, for coming out today. This space that we're in has a very, very special place in my heart. And I want to share that with you after a couple more thank yous. Thank you to Mr. Eam from Ortiz Dominguez School, CPS, my alderman, Alderman Rodriguez, Alderman Sixto Lopez, for coming out today. And all these guys over here who have been with all day setting up, and tonight they're going to have to take all this down. Thank you all too. Thank you. So for a little over 40 years, this space outside was one of the most dangerous places in this neighborhood. This generation of young people don't know this as a dangerous place. They know this as a place where they come to have fun, they come with their families, they come to have a nice night in the summer. You're all welcome to stay and watch the movie. It's going to start about 8:15. Two things I've learned in my 28 years of doing this work in the neighborhood: behavior change. Superintendent, you hit it right on the head. Back in 2009, I was talking with Mary Ann Mason from Lewis Children's Hospital, and I said, Mary Ann, how do we get people to stop being so violent? And she said, you know what, Rob? Behavior change isn't something that you wake up and all of a sudden you change your behavior. Behavior change comes when perceptions change. And it hit me right there, because as a neighborhood, we had been doing things like B-Ball on the Block, we had been doing things like Healing the Hood, and we had been doing all of these like outdoor engagements, activations, and you could see, as the superintendent mentioned on 6th and Halstead, when perceptions change, when things change around you, it makes you pause and be like, okay, now that this is changing, what is my role in that, right? And when the research says that publicly owned spaces, schools, parks, publicly owned spaces can either increase or decrease crime around them by up to 60%. 60%. The two variables that determine whether or not crime goes up or down in those spaces: number one, how often is the space intentionally used by a diverse group of people? And diversity there is talking about age and gender. So little kids, all the way up to grandma and grandpa. Everybody has a role in making and activating public spaces. A lot of times we think about, oh, let's do things for youth. And we used to do this back in the day, Hoops in the Hood, and we would have basketball tournaments, have like 150 youth out, 15 to 19-year-old, mostly males. Let me tell you, although it was a great event, you didn't always feel safe. You know what makes it feel safe? When we have little kids running around, when we have adults running around, when young people don't have to worry about being in charge of a space. That's what makes it feel safe. Having a whole community come together. So number one, the first variable, what makes the difference as far as a space feeling safe? Number one, is it used regularly by a diverse group of people? Number two, what's the condition of the built environment? All around this campus for about a good 20 plus years, it was gang graffiti all over all these buildings. We had a dirt field. The basketball courts were leaning over. The solution, not take down the rims. The solution, not fix the water fountain. The solution is take care of the built environment. We have these gatherings together, right? And I do a lot of great work with the Community Safety Coordination Center, the CSEC, and in the people's plan around environment, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about engaging communities to activate public spaces And there's two sides to that, and you heard it here up all night, right? We have the community work that needs to be done, getting people out of all ages on a consistent basis, but we also need government. We need to make sure the lights work. We need to make sure we have access to the fields and the courts. And so the call for us tonight, right? We came to this meeting, we heard about the plan, we got updates, but now it's a call to action, right? What are we doing to make sure that we're having consistent, regular activations in our public spaces so that our children can be children? And when we're engaging people who are of highest promise, engaging them other than the fact that they're maybe drivers of violence, but how about engaging them because they're mom or because they're dad, or at this point because they're grandma or grandpa? So that's our call to action. Thank you all for coming today. Go Chicago.